Hello, and welcome to KPMG's podcast on Accounting Standards Update 2011-10, Derecognition of In-Substance Real Estate. My name is Darren Robb, a Senior Manager in KPMG's Department of Professional Practice. The objective of this podcast is to provide you with the background on and an overview of ASU 2011-10. Often, investors in real estate will hold the real estate asset and any related debt in a single-purpose entity, an SPE, that is considered to be in-substance real estate. The investor typically holds a controlling financial interest in the SPE and consolidates that SPE within its financial statements. With the deterioration of economic conditions over the last few years, many borrowers, including those that own real estate, have defaulted on their debt obligations due to financial difficulties. A question has arisen as to the appropriate time for the investor to derecognize the real estate held within the SPE. Specifically, the question as to whether or not the guidance in Accounting Standards Codification Subtopic 36020, Real Estate Sales, applies to the derecognition of the in-substance real estate, that is, the SPE that holds the real estate. Let's walk through an example scenario that was presented to the Emerging Issues Task Force to explain the issue. In this example, a SPE considered in-substance real estate is controlled and consolidated by Investor A. Investor A borrowed $1 million to purchase a real estate property. Eventually, that entity defaulted on the non-recourse mortgage obligation. Prior to the transfer of the property to the lender, the following is likely to occur. Investor A may be required to recognize an impairment loss on the real estate as the deterioration of the property's cash flows would be considered an impairment trigger. Investor A may lose its controlling financial interest as determined under ASC subtopic 81010, consolidations, as typically non-recourse mortgage obligations allow the lender to take control of the property upon events of default. At this point, however, the criteria in ASC subtopic 36020 to derecognize real estate have likely not been met. That is, the transfer of the property has not yet occurred. The issue is whether Investor A would need to meet the criteria within the real estate sales guidance in order to derecognize the in-substance real estate, or instead, should Investor A look to the guidance in the consolidations accounting literature to deconsolidate the SPE. This issue was originally discussed at the September 2010 EITF meeting. Subsequent to that meeting, the task force formed working groups to discuss other implications of the issue that were brought up during the discussion. A final consensus was reached at the November 2011 EITF meeting. This final consensus was ratified by the FASB, and Accounting Standards Update 2011-10, Derecognition of In-Substance Real Estate, was released. The scope of the issue was limited to the fact pattern described in the example presented to the task force, and in that situation, the real estate sales criteria in ASC subtopic 36020 would apply to derecognition of in-substance real estate. No additional disclosures beyond those related to any change in accounting principle would be required. The guidance would apply for public companies for fiscal years and interim periods within those years beginning on or after June 15, 2012. And private companies would apply the guidance in fiscal years ending after December 15, 2013, and interim and annual periods thereafter. Early adoption is permitted, and prospective application is required. During the task force discussion on Issue 10E, questions arose about whether the accounting for interests in SPEs that consist of non-financial assets should be based only on the underlying non-financial assets. This issue was also raised in some of the comment letters. As a result, the FASB also decided to add a research project to its agenda that will explore when an entity that consists of non-financial assets should be accounted for as in-substance assets. The results of this research effort will be used by the FASB chairman to decide whether to add a standard-setting project to the agenda. This project will include research to explore the distinction between an in-substance asset and an entity and analyze its effect on the application of current accounting guidance. Proposed accounting standards updates that may affect the current guidance and the board's project on the conceptual framework reporting entity will also be considered in this research project. The FASB has not yet established a timeline for this project. Although ASU 2011-10 has been released, stay tuned for further developments from the FASB on some of the broader issues that came about during the discussions.